This podcast is brought to you by the Heldridge Hotel, New Brunswick's only 4-star hotel and a preferred hotel of Rutgers football fans. The Heldridge helps you make the most of your game day weekend, providing premium accommodations in the cultural heart of downtown New Brunswick. Restaurants, bars, theaters, parks, museums, and more are only steps away. Whether you're traveling alone or with a large group, book your stay at the Heldridge and make the most of your game day weekend. Visit theheldridge.com today.
Being a marketer's no sweat. You just have to manage dozens of channels, launch hundreds of campaigns, score thousands of leads, and okay, fine, it's a lot of sweat. Unless you have HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools to help you do all that and more. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
From NJ.com and the Star Ledger, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politi and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start shopping.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Rant. Politi here. Lanny, Fonseca. A lot to talk about today. Going to start, of course, with the Garden State Hardwood Classic. One of us on this podcast believed the game lived up to its name. The other two were actually there. Pat, I just got to say this because it was great. We're walking out of this thing, and like most of us who watched this game were like, "Holy crap! I can't believe they survived this. The first 39 minutes and 54 seconds of just of not what you want to see from the Scarlet Knights. 6 seconds, great. We're over. Then I get this text from Lanny, simply classic in all caps.
Exclamation point.
Exclamation point. So go ahead. Tell us why. Tell us why you thought
because 10 years from now, when you're talking about the great year that Dylan Harper has at Rutgers, you're going to be like, remember that time he hit that amazing buzzer beater at BC? No, that's what makes a classic to me, right? Like something that gets talked about in the future. Like people will remember that moment. Of course, the game was awful. I'm not saying it was like terrific basketball. It was horrible. But that moment instantly elevated it to a level that's going to be part of the pantheon of the rivalry for years. So that's why I thought it was a classic. Not because it was like fantastic basketball, right? You guys broke that down really well.
That's a fair explanation. You've been flying. You've been flying in 30,000 feet here. You're like one of the drones. You've been the guy who's been able to see this from the distance for a while now. Yeah, that's fair, Brian. Right? You give him that.
I think it's a totally fair explanation, and I think he's right. 10 years from now, it will be viewed as that. And I think you could view it at a macro level, like. We compare this a lot to the Ron Harper shot against Purdue. I think some of that probably is a bit overplayed. But the reality is even Ron Harper, before he hits that game-winning shot at half court, hits a huge two-pointer that would have probably won them the game if they got a stop at the end. And he had a huge second half. Much like Dylan, huge two-pointer, huge second half, practically carried Rutgers to the win. I guess at a micro level, we're looking at it now 2 days after the game and how it appears with the rest of the season. The fact Rutgers needed a game-winning three-pointer at the last second against the worst Seton Hall team in the Ken Pom era. Right now, they are on pace to be the worst Seton Hall team this century. And they needed a three-pointer when they had two NBA players at the free throw line with 4 chances to put the game away, and they couldn't hit their free throws. And that, to me, is the issue, is that, yes, it was, I agree, an instant classic ending. It will be replayed in those video highlight boards before every game from now until the rest of eternity. It should have never happened.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the shot first, and then we'll talk about the shit. Shot. I will say this: the thing about it that, and when you do take a pause to think about it, just think about what this family has given this basketball program, right? Like, I mean, and I saw Maria Harper afterward, and I did go up to her and like I just said, I'm just checking. See if you got another son, like maybe it's like in a crawl space of the house or something. And she's like, yeah, you think that's the first time I've heard that joke? Yeah. made a joke about her daughter, who of course, doesn't play basketball. It's funny, but it really is it's just amazing. I mean, Ron dragged the program from, along with Geo Baker and Caleb McCollum, from nothing to something. Had all these moments, all these brilliant shots, made that moment against Purdue one of the best moments in the program's history, period. Now his brother comes here and does the same thing against Seton Hall. the one team in the state that is at at Rutgers' level. Princeton, apologies. Just think about it. The same kind of shot, the same kind of circumstances. I don't know. It is very cool when you think of it that way. And you're right, Pat. We're gonna talk about that for a long time when this kid is playing for the Nets in a few years.
No doubt. Yeah. And the great part about it too is if you trace this back, the Harper legacy to them growing up with basketball, right? The way that Maria Harper was their coach at Don Bosco. Obviously, their dad is so accomplished in the NBA and all that. But the way they went to Don Bosco is not a basketball school.
Yeah.
Right. They went to a school that's close to their house. Right. Their mom was going to be their coach. It was like a cool situation that kind of set the stage for them to pick Rutgers ultimately. Right. They didn't go seeking this great opportunity and these lavish circumstances to play for the greatest program, the big brand of basketball. They chose loyalty. And I think that's a big part of the legacy too. They chose what was the best path for them, and being different ultimately is something that's going to stand out to me, right? They chose to set their own path, and that's kind of under the radar these days. Doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I would build on that with kind of Rutgers is being rewarded for doing a similar thing in that they recruited Ron Harper Jr. when nobody else was recruiting him. Mm-hmm. It was Rutgers, a little bit of Nebraska, and then a bunch of low majors. They found him as a diamond in the rough. Well, I mean, he was the son of a 5-time NBA champion, but somehow no one was going after the kid. Rutgers took a chance on him. He obviously paid back tenfold with what he did in his career, but then he paid back in what they did with Ron Jr., convinced Maria that this is the place she wanted to send her son. Maria Harper had a major influence, obviously, in her son's recruitment, and I think that Steve Peichel and Brandon Knight and that staff won her over significantly with how they treated her older son, and now that her younger son is, again, one of the best prospects to come out of New Jersey in a decade, this really paid dividends. And I joked in my player grades that the greatest coaching move Steve Peichel made to win that game Saturday was convincing Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey to sign their NILs 12 months before that. And I think to kind of exaggerate that point a bit, the greatest move he ever made to win that game Saturday was getting Ron Harper Jr. to join his program 7 years ago. And ultimately, it won him a game against Purdue, it won him an NCAA tournament game against Clemson, and it won him this huge game against Seton Hall.
Yeah. And and the other part of it, and just like Ron, they also have this personality that makes it that, you can see a lot of Ron in Dylan. He's still young. He's still kind of a kid, the way he talks sometimes, but he's just got this outsized personality. They soak up these moments. After he hits the shot, it's just it was never a doubt when he set back. It's funny, talking to Jordan Durkak about it. Durkak says he passes the ball too close to the baseline. He's gotta hurry. And then Dylan's I got this. Just dribbles up calmly, 28-footer or whatever it was. I mean, and then just the reaction. He's just got this huge personality. No moment seems too big for him. I, again, don't know where it's going to take us, but he just fits. He is just a star. That's the only way I can describe it. Just plays like a star, carries himself like one, is a star.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I was watching on TV, as you noted, I was not there, but I was like, how did he get so open on that shot? And then I had to watch the replay to realize that he just crossed up the defender, put him on ice skates to get such an open look. And I was like, wow, that was maybe more incredible than hitting the shot itself, was getting that open for the look.
I think it shows how talented he is, because I think they were terrified of him driving to the rim. Maybe he gets a shot up, maybe they foul him. So they're stuck between, should I guard him at the perimeter? Should I drop back? I think they ultimately drop back. And he was great from three. I think he was 4 of 7 against Seton Hall. So again, another credit, this team was not unable to score in any way. They just could not get anything going. He just takes the ball in the second half and says, whatever, I'll hit threes. I'll go to the rim. I'll do whatever it takes. And when the moment they needed him the most at the end, everyone in that entire arena knew Dylan Harper was going to take the shot. Shaheen Holloway, Garway Duel, everyone knew he was taking the shot. And he still made it. And to your point about sounding like Ron, if you go to his post-game press conference and just close your eyes and listen to him talk, you swear to God you're listening to Ron Jr. It's the voice, the cadence, the jokes, the quick wit. When you ask him about how his shot Saturday compared to Ron Jr.'s shot against Purdue, I know he was already asked by Fox in the post-game interview, so he already had an idea of what to say. But just a really smart, quick answer, thoughtful, very impressive off the court, on the court. And Rutgers, again, is very, very lucky to have him in more ways than one.
Yeah. And we should say here, they wouldn't be in a position to even have a chance to win the game at the end if it weren't for Ace Bailey in the first half, who in a lot of ways was even more ridiculous with some of the shots he's hitting. This is the Ace Bailey experience for me. It's like, oh no, Ace, that's terrific. I mean, terrific. That's like every shot he takes, you're like, oh. Yeah, it is. At this point, we should know better, but it's just your instincts tell you every time he pulls up for one of those 18-footers off balance, baseline, like in traffic. But man, and then the ones he misses, he'll his rebound, put it back up. Without him in the first half, there would be Rutgers was a turnover machine. It just looked as bad as they have offensively this season in that half, if not for, again, one player's brilliant ability to score.
Yes. Watching Ace Bailey next to me must be a miserable experience, so I do apologize to you, Steve, because every time he gets the ball, I'm screaming, pass the ball, pass the ball. And then he throws up an 18-footer with a hand in his face, and it goes in nothing but net, and I feel like an idiot for telling him to pass the ball. The thing is, Ace Bailey is a black hole offensively in that the ball goes in his hands, it will not leave there outside of a shot going up. But when he makes the most unbelievable shots you have seen in a Rutgers player, maybe since Quincy Duvey, probably since ever, it's hard to fault the guy for taking it upon himself. The thing is that Rutgers under Steve Pikiell has long been most successful as an isolation offense. You put the ball in Geo Baker's hands, you put the ball in Ron Harper Jr.'s hands, you let them do what they do, and they score. Never has that looked better than when you have Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. And again, that's why I hate to keep harping on this. That's why they won the game, is because they had the two most talented players on the floor who can score at will, create their own shot. As Dylan Harper said, when you have a guy who's 6'10" and can shoot over anybody, it makes your life a little bit easier.
Yeah. And after the game, Steve Pikiell, some of the many things he said, obviously in a good mood, but the one quote that stuck with me, it's like that he said, "We keep finding ways to win." As far as I can tell, I'm going to check the list. You have found one way to win, one way to win, and it's with these two incredible freshmen dragging you across the finish line. And that's the other side of it. And I understand the Rutgers fans who want to enjoy that moment and be grateful. Rivalry game. If you said to me, rivalry game, we managed to win a dramatic shot, it was a good moment. But if you also walked out of there saying, holy crap, 15 turnovers, 15 missed free throws, still the same. We turned this awful scoring team into one of their best performances offensively. There was a lot there that would concern you. And it's a lot of the same things we've seen. It's not like it's a new concern, although obviously the turnovers maybe, but for the most part, it was not a pretty performance.
No. And right, maybe the defense was a little better, but it's not like Seton Hall came in with this awesome offense. They're really, really struggling offensively. So that was, you can't check that box. So, yeah, I think there was a lot of there wasn't a whole lot to say, okay, they fixed this, they fixed that. It's more of the same. So I think you're absolutely right. There's not a huge encouraging sign to build off of, but right, to his point, they did win, and they did it on the back of those two players. So
they won the game. That's all that matters ultimately at the end of the day. They trailed Seton Hall for 28 minutes. A Seton Hall team that lost to Monmouth by double digits. They're the only team Monmouth beat all year. Monmouth. They were down by double digits to Oklahoma State. Like a bad to mediocre Oklahoma State team. They were down double digits and out of the game in the first half. Seton Hall walked into the rack, took complete control of the game, mucked it up exactly like they had to, and put the control over Rutgers. They controlled the entire first half, right? And Rutgers could do nothing. This is one of the worst 2-point shooting teams in the country. They were 353rd in 2-point percentage. They were getting layups and dunks at will throughout the entire game, because all they had to do was put these guys in a pick and roll. Both Lathan Somerville and Emmanuel Bully just were stuck in no man's land because they weren't sure whether to drop, whether to go up. They were caught in the middle, and every time Seton Hall, if they wanted to run the same play 70 times, I think it would have worked every time. And it felt like they did in the second half when Dylan Harper was kind of pushing Rutgers back. Seton Hall just kept getting to the rim and finishing. I think that is concerning because, again, this is not like a Seton Hall team with Kadari Richmond, Alamir Dawes, their center, whose name I forget last year, who was really good. This is a bad Seton Hall team, the worst Seton Hall team of the 21st century, and they're running offense like an NBA team, just getting open look after open look. That's concerning when you get to Big Ten play and you're playing much better teams. Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey can't score 80 points a game and carry you to 10 Big Ten wins. They got to get some more out of the other guys. And to their credit, Jordan Durkak, you can talk to this point, Steve. Jordan Durkak was good in the second half. There was glimpses of some other guys. They need more from everyone else.
Right. Yeah. And I don't think the way the game started, it was just 5 turnovers in like the first 40 seconds. It felt like I don't think they're going to have 15 turnovers in a game like that again. I don't think they're going to miss 15 free throws. It seems like, I shouldn't say that. The great quote, another great line by Dylan Harper. It's like, missing free throws. It's in the pipeline down here or something, right? I'm like, that's kind of it, kid. Yeah, we've seen that a lot. Yeah, that is something in the pipeline. Yeah, check the rims, right? Yeah, kind of again awareness as to what the Rutgers history on that is. So those two things aside, I think this game certainly would have been a much more comfortable win if Ace and Dylan swished 3 of those 4. If early in the game, some good, and it wasn't. And again, it wasn't like you don't expect it from a Bole. There were good free throw shooters missing free throws. Or you think the ones who should be good free throw shooters in this team. Granted, that'll be better. I come back to this. I don't think the defense is going to be better, and that's what concerns me. Hasn't seen it at all. Now you're going to play Princeton, like a team that is drilled in its offense, knows its system. It already gets layups against good defensive teams with more talent. Now you've got a bad defensive team. Like this is the kind of stuff that worries me. Like when you play some of these teams that are efficient offensively, that know what they want to do, that know how to get teams out of position already, that know how to set screens, that know how to to move the ball well. I think it's going to be a big problem.
They have an elite point guard and an elite rebounder, which should send shivers down the spine of Rutgers fans watching this team. Listen. Should Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey have hit those free throws at the end? Absolutely. I think it would be a little over the top to assign any blame to them, really.
Of course.
I
agree.
I'm about to say that's what you're doing. And look, Ace Bailey has to be better than 1 of 8 from the free throw line.
Yeah.
But
I'm just saying that they're likely to hit them. They're more likely to hit them than not next time.
I totally agree with you. This is not exactly of what you said. I just want to make the point here that the last 2 people I'm pinning anything bad on about this Rutgers basketball team are Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. Those are the last 2 people on the list of blame if things go off the rails. It's those 2 guys are pretty safe in my book.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess the only thing that I want to question is like Princeton has that fundamentally sound reputation, right? Like they're a really efficient offense. They do things well. That's how they made that run to the Sweet 16. They beat you in other ways. Like that's how Rutgers was always under Peichel, right? Like they found ways to do the little things right and give you that relentless effort. Where is that on this team, right? Like that's the thing. Maybe if you're looking for hope and like maybe things can turn around, like maybe that's what it is. Like in these big games coming up, like that just sort of clicks. Like leadership finds a way to instill that. Like Jeremiah Williams kind of step up. Maybe those are the kind of situations that it comes out like something clicks, right? Like remember those Ron Harper Jr. teams, like when they beat all those ranked teams, like it was just effort and relentless will. That's kind of what we're going to need to see from Rutgers, in my opinion. Like if things are going to change to really take that next step, like it's got to be the effort and the will outside of those, the 2-star freshmen.
To that end, when Rutgers did make that run in February, it's because Paul Mulcahy played out of his absolute mind for a month, right? Rutgers is going to need to find somebody on this roster to play above and beyond. Is it Jordan Durkak? Is it Jeremiah Williams? It's got to be somebody. To your point about like the aggressiveness, like part of that is because they don't have these 4-year guys as Steve Peichel has harped on a lot. No Geo Baker, no Caleb McConnell. Your only real hope there, I think, is Jeremiah Williams kind of channeling that. He's been up and down, really. He had 7 rebounds, but he really struggled offensively. He threw a pass off the side of the backboard to kind of tell the tale of the story of his game. They need him to kind of be that solidifying force, and they need somebody else to be the Paul Mulcahy who, out of nowhere, just goes off.
Yeah, that's a great
You have
point.
it?
It's a great
I don't
point.
know.
Brian, do you think this is fun? The next two games, obviously notwithstanding, but do you think it's the point now where we're going to see Steve Peichel take what was just kind of a throwing guys out there to bringing down the rotation to 7 guys, to 6 guys, to playing the same guys? Because I think it at least for me, I know I could rank the guys now in order of which who I trust. Right now, it's like Durkak. It's crazy to think that he'd be the 3rd most important player in this team, but the way Jeremiah Williams is playing, I might put him there right now. Gets the ball to the basket, gets to the free throw line, distributes, plays defense. He does a couple of things well. Then Jeremiah Williams. Then, Somerville. I get it. We're stretching here, but like he's next on the list. Like, and you saw like that big rebound late in that game when he grabbed the ball and like just looked like I got to have this ball. Like there's a little bit there. He's good offensively. And then I'm starting to like wonder like where the next level is, because they have a couple guys there who, when they're on the court, I don't trust them to play defense. They're not getting shots. They're not contributing in a way like PJ Hayes. If he's not going to shoot 4 or 5 3-pointers like he did against Penn State, what's the point? Zach Martini seems like I just feel bad saying it, but just nothing right now. He just hasn't contributed. So I just wonder if that's going to happen with this rotation.
I totally agree. To your point on Somerville, I think he has the best chance of really taking the next step in Big Ten play. The flashes are there, man. That rebound was tremendous. Huge point of the game, too. He hits the free throws, like clutch free throws in the second half. He gets a big block defensively. He has the offensive skill that you want in a center, that we have begged to see in a center under Steve Peichel. It's just he has to figure out how to play defense in college, which takes time. Rutgers does not have a lot of time on its side now, so they're going to have to hope that he figures it out somehow. And if he does, I think that'll be the key to really Rutgers kind of taking that next step. To your point on the rotation, he kind of did that against Penn State. They sat 3 guys that didn't play, Dylan Grant, Bryce Dortch, and Zach Martini. They had 2 guys who played 4 minutes, PJ Hayes and Tyson Acuff, and then the rest was a 7-man rotation. They played the 2 centers, Obole and Somerville, and the 7th guy was Durkak off the bench because JaMychal Davis started. So those are the 7 guys that it seems like if the rotation is going to tighten, and then you get 1 or 2, the 8th or 9th guys, PJ Hayes or Tyson Acuff, depending on the matchup. I agree with you with what you wrote on your column, that a lot of the pieces on this team is like PJ Hayes. I would trust him to hit an open shot. I don't trust him to guard a guy one-on-one because, as we saw against Dylan Dayawusu, he gets blown by. Zach Martini, if he gets an open shot, I trust him. He had such a hard time defensively against Seton Hall. I counted he gave up 9 points or 8 points in the span of 3 possessions. They're missing guys who play 2 ways, and that's the issue. Trying to figure it out. You can disguise one guy defensively. If you have one bad defender, you could figure it out. You have multiple bad defenders on the court. It's kind of a challenge here for Steve Peichel and the staff.
Right. All right. Good stuff. Anything else you want to talk hoops? We can dive into some questions from the Discord.
The only thing I want to say is that these next 2 games, as must win as the Seton Hall game was, these next 2 games are similarly must win. The Princeton game won't kill your resume, but it's again, it's a Q2 game. It's a
not going to stay there, is it? You think he'll stay at Q2?
I mean, assuming they don't crash in Ivy League play.
Right. Okay.
So it's a win that would add to your resume and an easier quad 2 win than the Big Ten, right? And then Columbia, a little bit of a trap game. They're one of the best low major teams in the country this year. You got to beat them. That is another cratering loss if you take one. So these 2 are the 2 biggest games left on the schedule, essentially. And then you start Big Ten play in Indiana, which would give you a big chance to kind of start things up well. We'll see.
Indeed. We'll see. All right. We've got some good questions from Discord and from Twitter. The Discord. Whose idea was that? What idea was that? Things got a little frisky in the Discord on Sunday. I apologize to anybody who was part of our frisky Discord, but send us an invitation if you want to join the Discord discussion. I was thinking about this. This is what cracks me. Like when I started my career, the thing that drove me craziest were emails from people who said, Politi, why are you so negative all the time? You're so negative. Always so negative. Hate Rutgers. Like, dude, the team's 2-10 and just lost to Maryland by 38 points. What do you want from me? That drove me crazy. That has been replaced on my list of things that drive me craziest with the new one. The new thing that just makes me want to pull the 4 hair follicles I have out is the wait. Let's just see how the season plays out. If we see how the season plays out, If we wait, we'll get fired. I've got kids to feed here. We talk about stuff as it happens. It's okay. Sometimes we overreact. It's just why don't we just wait until the season plays out? So now people know how to push a button. You want to push a button? Just send me an email. I can see Lanny now. We'll be sitting there at the radio.
You know what's the interesting thing?
It's great.
No, when they're winning, no one is ever like, let's see how the season plays out before we get all crazy here thinking about the Final Four, guys. Let's see how the season plays out. Everyone's talking about who's playing well and who's playing great and all the great coaching moves, and no one ever says, hey, let's win this. You think when they lose a game, Steve Pikiell goes into the team meeting room and he says, hey, guys, let's see how the season plays out. Let's just see how we play against Princeton. Relax.
It's okay to we react. It's okay to point things out and be critical and not like the coaching in a game. Whatever. Anyway, that's the Discord. Please send you an invitation. Hop in there. Here's some questions from Twitter from Patrick. Why has foul shooting been an issue year after year for Pikiell teams? Even when the faces change, the free throw rules continue. I thought this would be a different team, Brian. In some ways, it has been a different team. Is that an anomaly of that game? And I think Ace Bailey, it is now just in his noggin. Like that he's an 18-year-old kid who gets to the line now and thought about the last 4 he missed. I have to imagine that he'll shake out of that or he won't. Like there's, that is not a stroke thing. That is not he's going to be a good free throw shooter. So
I think the issue for Ace Bailey at the free throw line is it's too easy. He's like, wait a minute, this isn't an 18-foot baseline jumper with 2 defenders on my back.
Can you take the free throw? Could you take the free throw with 6 people standing in front of you? It'd be great. You hit every one of them.
Yes. I think he'll be fine, and I think Dylan Harper will be fine. To answer the broader question, it's very simple. Free throw shooting is mostly not coached. It's talent. It's recruited. You either recruit great shooters or you don't. And I haven't broken this down. I probably should have before the podcast. I'd be curious to know how many free throws Zach Martini and PJ Hayes have taken. That to me is a big curiosity versus the other guys that are taking free throws. Obviously, in this game, it's not really the same. Ace Bailey took 8 free throws. Dylan Harper took 7. That's half of your free throws, right? But I would venture that across the entire season, and Rutgers is not shooting poorly on free throws. They're shooting?
Dylan had the game where he was 15 and 16, so they can't be right. So it can't be that bad.
Rutgers is shooting 71%, which is not terrible, right? No. I mean, it's middle of the pack nationally, but for Rutgers standards, it's not terrible. But to answer the question, Rutgers doesn't have exceptional free throw shooting because they don't recruit exceptional free throw shooters. Right. That really is a simple answer.
I have to wonder if Durkak's going to be better. Dylan will be better. Yeah, and you're right. I think, what is the number? You had numbers in your story today. Like Dylan's took 71, and the next 2 guys combined don't have as many free throws as Dylan or something crazy like that.
Correct. He has the most free throws taken by a Rutgers player, and the next 2 players who are Somerville and Durkak combined have less than Dylan Harper. Yes.
There you go.
So it's almost like a field goal kicker, because when you watch games, right, you automatically think that free throws are automatic, right? Your expectation is that you're going to make every single one of them. If sometimes, like when you have a game as bad as it was against Seton Hall, it just jumps to the forefront of your mind. But you take a step back, like the overall percentage is still, like Brian said, pretty good for Rutgers, considering where this has been. So this is another 30,000 feet. Let's see how the next couple of games go,
Yeah. The thing is also that Rutgers doesn't have, again, an exceptional 90% guy. There are teams that have guys who are just knockdown free throw shooters. Yeah, right. Rutgers doesn't have that. But they really don't have like in years past, there are guys who, when they went to the free throw line, you might as well chalk it up to 2 missed free throws. Even Manuel Boley's the decent free throw shooter this year. Like it's not they don't have any bad free throw shooters. They just don't have any really good free throw shooters either. Right. They're perfectly mediocre at the free throw line.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, they signed for mediocre given some past years, but it can't be as bad as it was in that game. All right, moving on to the other questions. John Clay, what is at the top of your Rutgers Christmas wish list this year? Great question. I mean, I don't know. The NCAA tournament it's the only thing that Rutgers fans should want. I think that's number one. You guys got anything?
Pass rush for next season.
Rusher. It's
been a couple of years since there's been a good pass rush.
Defensive end. That's what you're saying. Yeah.
Disruptive defender.
Yeah. Brian, what are you asking for?
I'll go with a quality, young, up and coming defensive coordinator who fills in for Joe Harris-Simiak and kind of brings the defense back to a consistent level.
That's a good one. All right, we'll see. We'll see if you get that.
Well, if we're going Christmas, in theory, we can just ask for anything outrageous. I would say a Final Four, right? Forget making the NCAA tournament. How about aspiring? It's Christmas after all. Let's aspire a little different.
I can see Santa get that letter and be like, "Whoa, you've not been good enough for that, young Brian." Here's a shin guard. What's the best gift you got as a kid, Brian Fonseca, growing up in Kearney, New Jersey? What was it?
The best gift? I don't know. Probably some video game. I played a lot of video games as a kid. Yeah, I can't remember. It's amazing how like the when you get those as a kid, it's the greatest moment of your life. And now I'm 28 years old and I remember nothing. It's kind of sad.
You got one, Lanny?
Yeah, 1998, Nintendo 64. I think it was 98, but the year Nintendo 64 came out, it was a big deal.
That's awesome. Yeah. When I was a kid, they got this is the first model train set. No, I'm kidding. I'm not that old. Damn it. We got an Atari where they had the joystick and play Adventure when you were just this little dot and you'd run around. God, I love it. There's some people on this podcast who are like, I had that game, Adventure, on the Atari 2600, Davey. Can't beat it. All right. Kevin K, hypothetical. I'm a new hire covering Rutgers athletics. What kind of helpful day-to-day tips do you pass on, such as the best lunch place in Piscataway, which part of the rack has the best Wi-Fi signal, Chris Ash war stories, etc.? This is a great question. I mean, the first one's obvious. It'd be like pull him aside and go, "Hey, Kevin, man. I mean, what about law school? Have you thought about just buying season tickets? Go to business school." What do you got? What do you got for Kevin? Who's got advice?
Wow.
Don't ask Greg Schiano about injuries. You're wasting your time. It's a lesson we still haven't learned.
If that's the advice, why does Pat do it every week anyway?
It's a shtick at this point. Like, let's see. First of all,
expect to cover a winning team. Right. Set expectations low.
It's the same advice I would give anybody at starting a new job. It's like you've got to build relationships. You've got to not see everything as transactional. You've got to be there and show up when you write something critical. You've got to, be accountable, get the facts right, spell the names right. I mean, there's like some basic stuff for covering a team.
Yeah. I think as for lunch, there's always a Chaffee's every now and then and presented to you. So I think that's something to look forward to on Mondays. That's a good part of the job.
There you go. Absolutely. Wear a hat at practice so your bald head will get sunburned. All right. Brian K wants to know, Steve, when are we expected the report on Hobbs? And have they started the athletic director search? Wow. Those are two questions I wish we had the answers to. I will say, Brian, I think maybe the gymnastics thing is winding down. Or it should be winding down. The contract was only for a certain amount of money, and they think they spent it all at this point. I don't know if that means we'll see the report. What do you think?
I expect to see the report. I expect it to be done in the next couple of weeks, right? Again, to your point, it was a 2-month thing. It's stretched out now to its 3rd month. I don't think Rutgers wants to pay for a 4th month, and I would think that the timeline that they had discussed should lead to it being done within the next couple of weeks. Because if it's not, that means that more things have come up than they expected. It was more thorough of an investigation than expected, which would not be a good sign for Rutgers. And once they do get the investigation done, pending what's in it, I would think that then they could start the athletic director search in earnest. And Amy Towers had an interview this week in ROI&J. It sounds like, and this echoes kind of what President Holloway had said at a Board of Trustees meeting a couple months ago, that January is probably when they start the search, right? Is that kind of how you interpreted it, Steve?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and I think they're going to run them concurrently with the idea of perhaps, it sounded that way, getting them done at the same time. But we'll see. I mean, I think as many people have pointed out, the lack of a president will scare away some, not all, but some candidates. So that might be what they're trying to do. We'll see. I think they do like Ryan Passari. I don't know if a lot of this is, just a way of making sure he gets his feet into the job so they can, have him as a real candidate for it. I think that might be what we're seeing a little bit as well. But by all accounts, they're still planning to run a search. I have not heard anything other than that. So
I'd love to know what Ryan Passari thinks of all this. But
how would we possibly know that?
Maybe one day he'll speak.
Right. By talking to him. That would be great. All right, that's another another pod question was about the AD search. This was a fun one from Foxy B. Looking back at the football season, what was the decimation of the tight end room a blessing in disguise? It forced the team into 4 receiver sets and seemed to open things up. Do you think this will be an ideological shift moving forward for Shano and company? I don't know. Pat?
The last game at Michigan State, the way Ethan was playing, the way the offense was rolling, the 4 receivers, I was like, wow, this could be the start of like absolutely exactly that, a philosophical shift to where like your best, if you're catering this philosophy around the talent you have coming back next year, it's clearly the passing game is the strength of the offense. It should be built around being able to throw the ball. So I don't know if the tight end thing, I would put that aside. I would say that's just maybe that's how you got to the situation, but it certainly wasn't a good thing by any means.
No,
it was absolutely awful because you had a nice thing going with Kenny Fletcher. You gave you a nice little option in the receiving game. But I do think that next year, the strength of this offense, especially when you lose Kyle Monungai, is going to be on the back of Ethan Kaliak-Manis.
Right. Now the option is there, right? You could have a tight end that comes out that is a pass catcher. You can't have 4 wide receiver sets. The only thing I would say is that you've got to get a guy to replace Dymere Miller as to have another reliable pass catching option. They have a kid, DT Sheffield from North Texas. He's visiting today, so clearly they're targeting a number 1 receiver, a slot receiver to fill in for Miller. So if they can do that, I have big confidence that the passing attack will continue, so long as also they find someone at left tackle to replace Holland Pierce. That might be the trickiest part. We'll see how that kind of goes.
All right. Good job with the questions. Appreciate it. We're going to, just for programming note, we're going to have a full football / rate bowl preview episode. Is that what we're doing? Is that the plan?
Yeah.
Talk nothing but the rate bowl. Going to rate it up. I'm going to quiz you guys on interest rates in addition to, is that what a guarantee rate is? It must be in addition to Kansas State trivia. Can't wait to see what bullshit I pick up about them. All right. Anything else? Transfer portal update. Good news? Slow.
Just really quick. I'll run it by really quick. They've lost 3 scholarship guys to the portal. Nobody of surprise. Wesley Bailey, as we talked about last podcast, he has committed to Louisville, so he followed the Rene Kanga footsteps, left Rutgers, using his last year of eligibility, getting a nice payday in Kentucky. Good for him. Chris Long entered the portal, reserve wide receiver, battled injuries throughout his career, didn't really play much in the last 4 games of the season, so I think it's good for both sides to move on. Maybe he finds a place in a G5 school and kind of has an Eddie Lewis where didn't have a great career at Rutgers, but has a great career, at a lower level. Then Thomas Omankwa was playing at safety. His heart was on offense, went to Delaware. He's going to play wide receiver down there. Coming in, Rutgers has gotten 2 big-bodied defensive tackles, 2 guys who are over 300 pounds, very clearly trying to get some run stuffers, guys who can clog the middle of the defensive line to go against the run games and the big offensive lines in the Big Ten. That was clearly an emphasis for Rutgers. They added a running back, CJ Campbell, whose name I botched in the last episode, but now we know because he committed to Rutgers. We talked about this at the start of the transfer portal process. We thought they probably needed a running back to replace Kyle Monungai's production because they didn't have a proven bona fide guy. The only guy closest to that was Sam Brown, who obviously is going to be coming off of injury. I'm curious if you guys have seen kind of CJ Campbell's numbers, watched any film. What do you guys think about him coming in and kind of filling in for Monungai?
Yeah, well, I noticed that he has those nice receiving numbers and production in the passing game. And I think that just goes right back to our last point, too, to have that versatility in a running back. Not only are you going to have him, but Jayshon Benjamin is a great pass catcher. You're going to have some versatility there for an offense that may be able to throw the ball a little bit next year.
I was a little surprised, Brian. You said somewhere you thought you would be surprised if he wasn't the starter.
Yes. I would be surprised.
I certainly looks like he's got a resume. Just knowing that they're really happy about the young players in that room, I was a little surprised. I mean, I guess that if you're crossing off Sam Brown, assuming that the injury was serious enough that he will not be ready or at 100% for the first game, that changes a little bit. But still, I mean, we're going to see these guys showcased, I think, in the bowl game. They're high on them, so he's going to come in and just leapfrog those 2 right away.
He's a senior proven producer at albeit the G5 level. And they're bringing in a transfer, right? I just don't think they would bring in a transfer at this position if they thought it was a guy to be part of the rotation. I would say that if he's not starting, it would be a disappointment, and that would mean that they overevaluated him. So I would think that I think he'd be – if it was me, I would pencil him in as a starter. And listen, if a guy like Antoine Raymond or Ed Guerriere or Deshaun Benjamin takes over, or Samuel Brown comes back and they win the starting spot, that's good for Rutgers. That means that those guys have taken a step forward. I would say that no matter what, the running back position is in good
shape. Yeah. It's almost like an insurance policy, getting a veteran presence in the room, right? You have some great options, right? Sam Brown's the veteran leader, right? But you don't know what you're going to get with him. Just think about what Raymond and Jashaun Benjamin did against Minnesota when Monungai was out that one game. Like they played really well against a good defense, right? So like you know what you have there. Anything else is a bonus. So
right. It was one of the least things I was worried about positionally. It moved from one of to the least thing with this addition. A couple of positions that they have not addressed though. Defensive end, wide receiver,
offensive line.
Yeah, there's 5 positions now that Pat mentioned that I think are really important that Rutgers needs to fill in: a defensive end or 2, ideally a disruptive one, as Pat said; a wide receiver to replace Dymere Miller, number 1 guy; quarterback, probably need 1 or 2; safety, they're losing a lot of guys back there; and left tackle. I'm curious what you guys think. Like, if they have to nail one of them, like get one bona fide stud at any of those positions, which one do you think would be the most important?
Man, I know the obvious one is defensive end, but it might be cornerback for me.
Yeah, same. I was going to say cornerback too.
Yeah.
Because you saw what happened when Longerbeam wasn't playing well and Eric Rogers was hurt. Like, that was a huge hole in the defense, right? That was like probably the biggest issue during their 4-game losing stretch, was like they were just giving up huge yards after catch and couldn't cover, couldn't match speed. So, yeah, I know there are some good very young, inexperienced corners on the roster. And Bo Masco played really well by the end of the year, but he's still an underclassman. You got DK Gilly and Kevin Levy, the guys that are expected to be pretty good, but right, like they're not experienced. So I would think that getting an experienced cornerback would be a priority. And left tackle, of course, is like one of the most important positions in the game, but you feel pretty good about, like, you have at least the foundation of a solid line, right? Maybe getting the key spot is the biggest. Who's going to make that big jump to left tackle is a big deal.
Right. Yeah. I would say defensive end. I mean, in this scenario where you can get a stud, I think that to me would be. I don't think it's realistic, frankly, for them to get a stud defensive end. But I think if they are able to upgrade that position and create some, as Pat said, chaos, some disruptiveness out of there, that would make life so much easier for those young cornerbacks, for the brand new, secondary you're going to get at safety, and for the young linebackers that also struggled during that 4-game stretch. You're losing Tyreen Powell. Motere, assuming he comes back, will be off an ACL, and Daryl Jabomi will still be in his second year as a starter. So the more disruption you can get at the first level, the easier it makes it for everybody.
Mm-hmm. All right. Last thing we want to talk about, women's basketball. And I don't know if you've seen the clip of this, people listening, but go find it. Go on Twitter. Go find something. McMiller's move against Wagner. I guess it's Wagner, whatever. Don't worry about that. Just and old school people remember the old Allen Iverson commercial where he does the move, like he does this new. It's that move. It's crazy. Where I can't even describe it, bro. I mean, like it's just incredible to do it in the flow of a basketball game and then still dribbles into a double team and makes the shot over the double team. I mean, she's having a season that it's going to fly under the radar if the team's not good, but it is just incredible what she's doing.
Yeah. I hadn't seen the shot till this morning, and I was already impressed with her stat line against Wagner. 24 points on 10 of 20 shooting. She's playing really well this season. She's averaging 19.6 points on 18.5 shots a game. Woo, we have a Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey on the women's basketball team.
Combined. She's combined. Have gun, will shoot. I love it. Yes.
It's very impressive. But the highlight is going viral like crazy on even Geo Baker. Well, he was the reason I saw it. He quote tweeted it and said, "Wait, what?" as a shock to see that play. So, I would recommend people to go check it out because it really is. It would be impressive to watch her do that in a training session between cones. To do it in a live game, I don't care if it's Wagner or if it's Wisconsin. Very impressive.
Allen Iverson leaves the ball behind.
Yeah, right. Like, just has no regard for the ball where it's at. Like, but it's under control the whole time. It was unbelievable. It really is.
Yeah, it's a.
To go off that, this reminded me two couple things. She did it in Jordan Brand sneakers. She is sponsored by Jordan Brand, and in a day, assuming everything goes as expected, Rutgers will soon be sponsored by Nike. Rutgers has a Board of Governors meeting on Tuesday where they are expected to approve a measure that would make Nike the official apparel company of Rutgers Athletics, again, after 7 years of Adidas. Here's the thing. Rutgers would do it through a third-party distributor, BSN Sports. So Rutgers is not necessarily signing with Nike. They're signing with BSN to distribute Nike uniforms to them. What that means as far as access to premier jerseys and how much attention Rutgers will get from Nike will be seen, I guess, with the contracts that we get. But this is a little akin to other schools that have this deal, or Hofstra, Cincinnati, schools of that level. We're not talking exactly the Dukes and that level of Nike. Yeah. It's a little different. Obviously, we can talk about this on the next podcast and break it down. Rutgers was in a tough spot as far as leverage. The two biggest stars in the history of the athletic department were already wearing Nike shoes when Rutgers was wearing Adidas because they had their own individual deals with Nike, and they put their requests for proposal out in October, and the deadline to submit 4 jerseys for next season was last week before the Board of Governors meeting. So they had to have an emergency measure put in to approve that before the deal is even approved. The whole thing is a bit of a mess. What you need to know is that for the next 5 years, assuming this gets rubber stamped, Rutgers will be wearing Nike. There is another 5-year option after that. The totality of the deal for 10 years, assuming Rutgers takes the extra 5-year option, or whoever takes the 5-year option. I'm not sure whose side the option is on. Anyway, the point being, if it is 10 years, it is a total of $30 million, which is $3 million a year, which is roughly twice as much as the previous Adidas deal. Not great, really not great, but it is what it is. And the other thing on the Board of Governors agenda, and I'll let you guys go, Kirk Shiraka is scheduled to get a salary adjustment. Does that mean they up his salary and not the length of his deal? Does that mean they up the deal and the salary? I'm not sure. I have not been able to confirm that. We will find out tomorrow's meeting when it gets approved. But clearly, after losing their defensive coordinator, Rutgers wants to juice up his deal and probably juice up the buyout to make sure they keep Kirk Shiraka around Piscataway for as long as possible.
It's not a pay cut. I can tell you that. Who left this bad sneaker contract? Let me call that last athletic director and ask him a couple questions. I kid. That's a little.
He was busy worrying about other things. Okay,
other things.
More pressing.
He had other pressing issues. On that note, ladies and
He had to
gentlemen,
be a little flexible with his priorities.
I see.
You can read all about it in the report coming out in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, let's read that report. On that note, let's sign off. We'll be back later in the week to preview the Rate Bowl. It's going to be, I promise you, the best Rate Bowl preview podcast in America.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.